I will never forget that morning. Anna, my little 2-year-old, seemed different. It wasn't just the usual tiredness from a cold, there was something more, something that made me feel a tightness in my chest. She woke up with heavy eyes, her face paler than usual, and a slight fever. At first, I thought it was just the flu or a cold, something she might catch occasionally at daycare. But as the hours passed, the fever didn't go down, and a cough started, a cough that seemed to come from deep in her chest. As the day went on, I began to worry more. The cough was getting stronger, more frequent, and her breathing seemed a bit more difficult, as if something was squeezing her small lungs. I tried everything. I gave her liquids, kept her comfortable, and checked her fever every hour. But nothing seemed to help. What truly scared me was when I noticed that Anna was losing her appetite and didn't even want her favorite toys. With every passing minute, the feeling that something serious was happening kept growing. That night, as I held her in my arms and listened to her labored breathing, I knew this wasn't just a normal fever. Something was wrong, very wrong, and I needed to act quickly. The thought that it could be something more serious, like pneumonia, began to form in my mind, and fear settled into my heart. I looked at my daughter, so small and fragile, and felt a deep dread. What's happening to her? Why isn't the fever going down? Why does this cough seem so persistent? What if it really is pneumonia? These thoughts overwhelmed me, but I knew I couldn't panic just yet. I needed to be strong for her. At the same time, the uncertainty of what was to come made everything feel like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The next day, Anna wasn't better. In fact, she seemed to be getting worse by the hour. The fever stayed high, the cough remained strong, and now her breathing really started to worry me. There was something about the way she was breathing, something that didn't seem right. It was like she was making an extra effort to pull in air, and I could see her small chest rising and falling quickly, as if every breath was a struggle. I tried to convince her to eat something, but she just shook her head and turned away, exhausted. Seeing my daughter, usually so full of energy, lying there with no strength even to play, broke my heart. That's when I knew I couldn't wait any longer. With trembling hands, I picked up the phone and called the pediatrician. I told him everything, every detail of the symptoms, and his response was immediate. "You need to take her to the hospital now." Those words echoed in my mind, filling me with a fear I had never felt before. I knew something serious was happening, but hearing the urgency in the doctor's voice made everything feel more real. As I prepared Anna to go to the hospital, my mind was racing. What if it's pneumonia? What if she needs to be hospitalized? How did this happen so suddenly? As these questions tormented me, all I wanted was to get to the hospital and hear that my daughter would be okay. On the way to the hospital, I kept looking at her face, so pale and tired, and felt helpless. I, who had always protected her from everything, who had cared for her since the moment she was born, was now facing something I couldn't control. When we finally arrived at the emergency room, fear and anxiety completely took over me. After a brief wait that felt like an eternity, we were called in. The doctor carefully examined Anna, listening to her lungs and asking questions. Every passing second made me more tense. Then, he looked at me seriously and said we needed to do a chest X-ray. My heart raced. I knew they were looking for signs of pneumonia. When the X-ray was finally done and the images appeared on the screen, the doctor called me over to see. I will never forget that moment. He pointed to the dark areas in Anna's lungs and explained that it was bacterial pneumonia. Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt paralyzed with fear and, at the same time, full of questions. How did this happen so fast? And now, what do we do? L. The doctor began explaining the treatment, but my mind was elsewhere. All I could think about was my little Anna, the fight she was facing inside her small body, and my total inability to take that pain away from her. But I knew I had to stay calm and listen to what the doctor had to say. My daughter needed me more than ever, and I would do anything to make sure she would be okay. After the initial shock of hearing the diagnosis, I forced myself to focus on the doctor's words. I needed to understand what was happening to my daughter and, more importantly, what we needed to do to help her recover. The doctor patiently began to explain what it meant to have bacterial pneumonia. He said that pneumonia is an infection that affects the lungs and can be caused by either viruses or bacteria. In Anna's case, the infection was bacterial, which is usually more serious than viral pneumonia. He explained that in bacterial pneumonia, the alveoli, those small air sacs in the lungs, get filled with pus and fluid, making it difficult to breathe and for oxygen to exchange. That was why Anna was having so much trouble breathing. As he talked, I started to recall some things I had read about respiratory diseases, but nothing prepared me for hearing that, if not treated quickly, bacterial pneumonia can lead to serious complications like respiratory failure. My heart started racing again when I heard that, but the doctor, seeing my panic, immediately reassured me, saying that Anna's pneumonia had been detected in time and that she would receive the appropriate treatment. He also mentioned that viral pneumonia, although also dangerous, usually doesn't cause the same amount of pus in the lungs, which can make the symptoms a bit less severe. However, in small children like Anna, any type of pneumonia can be concerning because their lungs are still developing, which makes them more vulnerable. I asked how this had happened. How could a healthy, lively child suddenly be taken down by such a severe infection? The doctor explained that bacteria can enter the lungs in various ways, through the air we breathe, from an infection that spreads from another part of the body, or even after a common cold that weakens the immune system and opens the door for a more serious infection. He also talked about the importance of vaccines in preventing certain types of pneumonia and how simple habits like washing hands and avoiding contact with sick people can help reduce the risk. But, as much as I wanted to understand everything and ask all the right questions, my mind was still focused on the reality we were facing. I needed to know that my daughter was going to be okay, that she was going to get through this. The doctor, seeing my concern, got straight to the point. Anna would need antibiotics to fight the infection, and these antibiotics would need to be given quickly to avoid complications. In addition, she would need respiratory support, maybe even oxygen, to help her lungs recover. I nodded, trying to process everything, but at the same time, feeling a bit more hopeful. If the doctor was confident that she would get better with treatment, I needed to believe that too. As he continued to talk about what to expect in the next hours and days, I could only think of one thing: my daughter was sick, yes, but she was in good hands, and I would do everything I could to help her recover. After the doctor's explanation, Anna was quickly admitted to start treatment. Seeing my daughter lying in that hospital bed, with an oxygen mask covering her small face, was one of the hardest things I've ever had to face. But I knew that every step taken was crucial for her recovery. The antibiotics were started immediately. The doctor explained that they were necessary to fight the bacteria causing the infection in her lungs. Every time the nurse came into the room to administer the medication, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. Relief because I knew the treatment was underway, and anxiety because I wanted to see immediate results. I wanted to see Anna getting better. The first days were the hardest. The fever still persisted, and the cough, though less frequent, was still there. But what worried me the most was her breathing. It was still difficult, labored. There were moments when it seemed like she was getting better, and others when it seemed like she was getting worse. It was like we were on an emotional roller coaster, not knowing what to expect next. I stayed by her side the whole time, holding her hand, speaking softly, trying to give her all the strength and love I had. The nights were long, filled with the sound of the heart monitor and Anna's heavy breathing. In moments of despair, I prayed for her to overcome this, for those little lungs to win the battle they were fighting. The doctor warned me that the recovery process would be gradual. Anna was receiving the best possible treatment, but her body needed time to heal. Every small improvement, a fever that subsided, a breath that was a little less labored, was a victory, even if small. And I clung to these small victories as proof that everything would be okay. He also guided me on the importance of keeping Anna hydrated and nourished, even if she didn't have much appetite. Proper nutrition would help strengthen her body and fight the infection. It was a challenge, but with patience and care, I managed to get her to take small sips of water and eat a little food. Gradually, I noticed that the fever began to subside and that the cough was less intense. Her breathing, though still labored, seemed to be becoming more stable. Each improvement was like a ray of hope that illuminated the darkness I had felt since the diagnosis. After days of intensive treatment, the doctor finally gave the news I had been waiting for. Anna was responding well to the antibiotics and was starting to recover. Although she still needed care and observation, the worst seemed to be over. I almost cried with relief when I heard that. It was like a huge weight had been lifted off my chest. I knew there was still a way to go. Anna would need rest, and I would have to be careful to avoid any relapse. But just knowing that my daughter was getting better, that we were coming out of that storm, gave me renewed strength. I also learned a lot during this process, especially about the importance of acting quickly when it comes to such a serious illness as bacterial pneumonia. Now, more than ever, I knew I could never underestimate any sign that something wasn't right with Anna. Her health was my top priority, and I would do everything to protect her. Finally, after a week that felt like an eternity, we were informed that Anna could go home. The battle wasn't completely over, but I knew the worst was behind us. I took my little warrior home with a heart full of gratitude and a new respect for the fragility and strength of life. Bringing Anna home was one of the most emotional moments of my life. That simple act of opening the door and walking in with her in my arms felt like a triumph, a victory against an invisible threat that almost knocked us down. I looked at my home with new eyes, now aware of how everything could change so suddenly, without warning. The days that followed were dedicated to caring for her with all the love and patience I could offer. She was still recovering, and I knew it would take time for her to return to her normal, energetic, and joyful self. But the worst was over, and that was what mattered. Each day, she seemed stronger, more like the Anna I knew. During this time, I also had the chance to reflect on everything that had happened. I thought a lot about how quickly bacterial pneumonia developed, and how vital it was to recognize the signs and act quickly. And, more importantly, I realized how crucial it is to always be alert as a mother, and never underestimate the symptoms our children show. I also felt compelled to share what I learned with other mothers. Pneumonia, whether viral or bacterial, is not something to be ignored. Small children, especially, are so vulnerable. I understood, in practice, the difference between viral and bacterial pneumonia, and how the latter can be more devastating if not treated quickly. While viral pneumonia can be milder and resolve with home care, bacterial pneumonia requires immediate medical attention and can lead to serious complications. I want other mothers to know that they shouldn't hesitate to seek medical help if they notice something is wrong. That persistent fever, the cough that doesn't improve, the labored breathing, all of these are warning signs that cannot be ignored. Acting quickly can be the difference between a fast recovery and a risky situation. Furthermore, I now deeply understand the importance of vaccines and preventive measures. Vaccinating our children against diseases like pneumococcus can prevent situations like the one we went through. Hygiene, avoiding crowded places during outbreaks of respiratory illnesses, and being attentive to children's health are essential. As I see Anna returning to normal, playing and laughing as she did before, my heart fills with gratitude. Gratitude that we managed to detect the illness in time, that we had access to proper treatment, and that I can see my daughter recovering. But I also feel a responsibility to raise awareness among other mothers, to share our story so that, if any of them go through something similar, they can act quickly and with the same determination. This experience taught me that, as mothers, we need to be vigilant and informed. And above all, we need to trust our instincts. If something seems wrong, it probably is, and seeking help can save lives. I hug my little Anna, knowing that this battle has made us even stronger, and with the certainty that, together, we can face anything life throws at us.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. It would mean a lot to me and really help me out. I'm grateful for your support, and I look forward to bringing you more content. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.